Part 1. The Impossible Return. My name is Detective Marcus Webb, and I've been investigating maritime incidents for the Coast Guard Criminal Investigation Service for 15 years. I've dealt with smuggling operations, piracy, insurance fraud, and every kind of crime the ocean can hide. But nothing prepared me for what happened on March 14th, when the cargo vessel MV Neptune's Fortune disappeared for 48 hours, and returned with a crew that had never worked on that ship before. The call came at 6:23 a.m. from Port Authority in Seattle. Captain Sarah Mitchell sounded confused rather than alarmed, which immediately struck me as odd. Detective Webb, we have a situation at Dock 7. The Neptune's Fortune just arrived for scheduled offloading, but something's wrong with the crew. Wrong how? They're not the right people. The ship left Vancouver 3 days ago with Captain James Rodriguez and a crew of 18. The ship that just docked has a captain who claims his name is James Rodriguez, and 18 crew members, but none of them match our records. And detective, they all insist they've been working on this ship for years. 20 minutes later, I arrived at the port. The MV Neptune's Fortune sat at dock, a mid-sized cargo vessel about 150 meters long, looking completely normal. No visible damage, no signs of distress, cargo containers stacked neatly on deck. Everything appeared routine except for one impossible detail. The people on board shouldn't exist. Captain Mitchell met me at the gangway. They've been cooperative so far, but they're clearly confused about why we're questioning them. The man claiming to be Captain Rodriguez has all the right credentials, knows all the right procedures, but his fingerprints don't match our records for James Rodriguez. Where are they now? We've kept them on board for now, in the mess hall. Port security is stationed at all exits. We also impounded the ship's logs and documentation. I boarded the Neptune's Fortune and made my way to the mess hall. 19 people sat around tables, 18 crew members and one captain, all looking tired and increasingly irritated at being detained. The man who claimed to be Captain Rodriguez stood as I entered. He was in his 50s, weathered face, confident, bearing exactly what you'd expect from an experienced ship captain. I'm Captain James Rodriguez. Can someone please explain why we're being held here? We have cargo to offload and a schedule to maintain. I showed my credentials. Detective Webb, Coast Guard Criminal Investigation Service. Captain Rodriguez, I need to ask you some questions about your voyage from Vancouver. Of course. Though I don't understand what this is about. We had a completely routine trip. Left Vancouver on March 11th. Arrived here this morning as scheduled. Captain, can you show me your identification? He produced a commercial mariner credential and passport, both bearing the name James Rodriguez with his photo. They looked legitimate, proper holograms, correct formatting, all security features present. I compared his photo to the one we had on file for the real Captain Rodriguez. Similar age, similar build, but definitely not the same person. Different facial structure, different eyes, different ears. This man looked like he could be related to Rodriguez, but he wasn't Rodriguez. Captain, I need you to place your hand on this scanner. I pulled out a portable fingerprint reader. He complied without hesitation. The scanner read his prints and compared them to our database. No match for James Rodriguez or any other person in the Maritime Worker Registry. That's impossible, he said, looking at the negative result. I've been sailing under these credentials for 20 years. Of course they match the database. They don't. Which means either you're using fraudulent documents, or something very strange has happened. Can you tell me about your voyage from Vancouver? Every detail you remember. He sat down, genuinely confused now rather than irritated. We loaded cargo in Vancouver on March 11th. Standard containers, commercial goods, nothing unusual. We departed at 14 o'clock hours, headed down the coast towards Seattle. Weather was clear, seas were calm. We maintained regular speed, made our scheduled position reports to Coast Guard stations. It was completely unremarkable. Did you experience any unusual incidents during the voyage? Lost communications, Equipment failures. Anything out of the ordinary? Nothing. It was textbook navigation all the way. I pulled up the Coast Guard tracking data. According to our records, the Neptune's Fortune had left Vancouver on schedule, transmitted position reports for the first 12 hours, and then went silent. No distress calls, no emergency beacons, nothing. The ship had simply disappeared from all tracking systems for 48 hours. Search and rescue operations had been initiated, aircraft sent to search the projected course, but found nothing. Captain, our records show your ship went silent for 2 days. You disappeared from all radar and tracking systems. We had search operations looking for you. His confusion deepened. That's impossible. We maintained continuous radio contact. We never lost communications. Check your ship's chronometer. What date and time does it show? He pulled out his phone and showed me. March 14th, 6:15. That matched current time. Now check your ship's logs. When did you depart Vancouver according to your records? He opened the ship's logbook he'd brought with him. March 11th, 14 o'clock hours. We've been at sea for about 64 hours, which is exactly right for this voyage. But our tracking showed 72 hours since departure, with 48 hours of that time completely unaccounted for. Somehow, this ship and crew had lost an entire day without realizing it. I interviewed the other 18 crew members separately. Their stories were all consistent. They remembered leaving Vancouver. They remembered a normal voyage. They all insisted they'd been working on the Neptune's Fortune for months or years. When I showed them photos of the actual crew, the people who'd been documented as working on this ship, they didn't recognize any of them. I've never seen these people before, said a man claiming to be First Officer David Chen. Are you suggesting we're imposters? Why would 19 people all pretend to be a ship's crew? What would be the point? That's what I'm trying to determine. I had the Port Authority send officers to the addresses listed for the real crew of the Neptune's Fortune. What they found was deeply disturbing. Captain James Rodriguez's house was locked. His car was in the garage, but there was no sign of him. His neighbor said she'd last seen him 3 days ago, leaving with a duffel bag heading to work on his ship. The same pattern repeated for all 18 crew members. They'd all left home 3 days ago, heading to Vancouver to board the Neptune's Fortune. Their families confirmed they'd called from the ship after departure, saying everything was fine, and then they'd all gone silent. 19 people had boarded a ship 3 days ago. That ship had disappeared for 48 hours. When it reappeared, it had 19 different people on board, all claiming to be the original crew, all with perfect knowledge of how to operate the vessel. By noon, I'd assembled a team of specialist forensic investigators, maritime experts, and Dr. Patricia Reeves, a psychologist who'd worked on cases involving false memories and identity disorders. We needed to understand what had happened to both crews, the one that vanished and the one that appeared. Could this be an elaborate insurance fraud? Dr. Reeves suggested. The real crew abandons ship. A fake crew takes over. Somehow they profit from the situation. To what end? The cargo is all accounted for. Nothing was stolen or smuggled aboard. And the fake crew isn't trying to escape. They're genuinely confused about why we're questioning them. Forensic teams were going over every inch of the Neptune's Fortune. What they found was contradictory and impossible. The ship itself was definitely the Neptune's Fortune. Hull identification number matched. All documentation was correct. But there were small differences from the last port inspection. The galley has been rearranged, a forensic technician reported. Equipment is in different locations than documented 2 weeks ago. The crew quarters show signs of long-term habitation, personal items, photos, belongings, but none of them belong to the registered crew. These personal effects belong to the people currently on board. It was as if this crew had been living on the ship for months, despite all records showing they'd never set foot on it before. I returned to interview the fake Captain Rodriguez again, this time taking a different approach. Captain, I'm going to ask you to trust me and answer honestly. Do you remember anything unusual about your time on this ship? Any gaps in your memory? Any moments that don't quite make sense? He thought for a long moment. There was something. About a day into the voyage, I remember experiencing a strange feeling, like déjà vu, but more intense. For a few minutes, I wasn't sure where I was or how I'd gotten there. But then it passed, and everything felt normal again. When exactly did this happen? Around midnight on March 12th. I was on the bridge, maintaining course. The feeling hit me suddenly, this disorientation, this sense that something had changed. But when I checked all systems, everything was functioning normally, so I attributed it to fatigue. I checked the timeline. March 12th at midnight was approximately when the Neptune's fortune had vanished from tracking systems. Did any of your crew report similar experiences? Now that you mention it, yes. Several of them mentioned feeling strange around that time. We joked about it being something in the water or the galley food. Dr. Reeves was taking notes furiously. Detective, this sounds like a mass dissociative event, as if the entire crew experienced a shared break from reality at the exact moment. The ship disappeared from tracking. Or, I said slowly, something happened to the ship at that moment. Something that replaced one crew with another. I ordered the ship's cargo holds to be inspected, looking for anything unusual. In cargo hold 3, inspectors found something that made my blood run cold: a sealed container that wasn't listed on any manifest. It was a 20-foot shipping container, unmarked, with no documentation about its contents or origin. Open it, I ordered. The container door was forced open, and inside we found equipment. Sophisticated electronic gear, computer systems, machinery I didn't recognize. And in the center of it all, a device that looked like it might be some kind of transmitter or signal generator. What is this? I asked the forensics team. I have no idea. This technology, I've never seen anything like it. It's not standard maritime equipment, that's certain. We brought in specialists from various federal agencies, people who could identify unusual technology. What they told us was disturbing. This appears to be experimental quantum computing hardware, said Dr. Alan Park, a physicist from a nearby university who'd been called in to consult. Specifically, it looks like equipment designed to manipulate quantum states and possibly affect consciousness. But this is far beyond current technology. This is decades ahead of anything I know about. Could it have affected the crew? Changed their memories or identities somehow? Theoretically, maybe. Quantum mechanics has been theorized to play a role in consciousness. If this device was designed to manipulate quantum states in biological systems, it might be able to affect human perception, memory, even identity. But building such a device would require knowledge and resources far beyond current science. But it exists. It's sitting in that cargo hold. Yes. Which means someone has made breakthroughs in quantum technology that the rest of the world hasn't even conceived of yet. And they put that technology on a cargo ship for some reason. I returned to the fake Captain Rodriguez with new questions. Captain, do you remember loading any unusual cargo in Vancouver? Specifically, an unmarked container with electronic equipment. His expression became strange, distant. Yes. No. I don't know. When I try to remember the loading process, it's fuzzy. Like I'm looking at it through fog. What about the manifest? Does it list all your cargo? He pulled up the digital manifest on his tablet. 19 containers, all properly documented with contents and destinations. No mention of the mysterious 20th container. This can't be right. We're carrying 20 containers, not 19. I can see them on deck. He was right. From the bridge, you could clearly see 20 containers. But somehow, the manifest only listed 19. As if the crew's perception had been altered to not notice the discrepancy. Captain Rodriguez, I need you to listen carefully. I believe something happened to your ship during your voyage. Something that affected you and your crew. The technology in that unmarked container, I think it's responsible for changing you somehow. Changing us. Into what? Into different people. People who think they've been working on this ship for years. but actually appeared on it less than 3 days ago. People who have memories and identities that don't match any records. His face went pale. That's insane. I know who I am. I have memories going back decades. I remember my childhood, my training, my career. How could all of that be false? I don't know. But I intend to find out. Because if someone has the technology to replace an entire ship's crew with fabricated identities, they're going to use it again. And we need to stop them before they do. I called an emergency meeting with Coast Guard Command, FBI, and Homeland Security. This wasn't just a maritime mystery anymore. This was a potential national security threat of unprecedented scale. Part 2. The missing crew, while federal agencies scrambled to understand the quantum device found in the cargo hold. I focused on finding the original crew of the Neptune's Fortune. 19 people had vanished, and somewhere out there, they might still be alive. Wondering why they'd been replaced, I started with families. Captain James Rodriguez's wife, Maria, sat in her living room, looking at me with desperate hope. Have you found him? Is James alive? We're still investigating, Mrs. Rodriguez. But I need to ask you about the last time you spoke with your husband. He called me the evening after they left Vancouver. Said everything was fine. The weather was good. They'd be in Seattle in a couple days. That was the last time I heard from him. Tears filled her eyes. Detective, the Coast Guard said they found the ship, but James isn't on it. Where is my husband? That's what I'm trying to determine. Did your husband mention anything unusual about this voyage? Any concerns about cargo, crew, or unusual orders? She thought carefully. Now that you mention it, he did say something odd. He said this was the last run before he planned to retire. He'd never mentioned retiring before. We hadn't discussed it. Hadn't made any plans. But he seemed certain this would be his final voyage. Did he say why? No. I asked him, but he just said he had a feeling, like he knew something was ending. I thought he was being dramatic. But now, she looked at me with haunting fear. Detective, it's like he knew something was going to happen to him. I got similar reports from other crew members' families. Several had mentioned unusual feelings about this voyage, saying things that suggested they sensed something was wrong. One crew member had even joked to his brother, if anything happens to me, make sure they check the cargo. But none of them had reported specific threats or concerns to authorities. It was just a general unease, a sense that something about this voyage was different. I pulled maritime records for the Neptune's Fortune, tracing its movements over the past year. The ship had a standard route cargo runs between various West Coast ports, occasionally making trips to Alaska. Nothing unusual in its history. No record of suspicious activity. But then I noticed something strange. 3 months ago, the Neptune's Fortune had been in dry dock for 2 weeks for what was listed as routine maintenance. I contacted the shipyard that had done the work. Yes, we did work on the Neptune's Fortune, confirmed the shipyard manager, a gruff man named Tom Edwards. But it wasn't routine maintenance. We were installing specialized equipment in Cargo Hold 3. Custom job, very secretive. The client paid well for our discretion. What client? A company called Quantum Horizons Technologies. They said they were testing new cargo monitoring systems. We installed mounting brackets, power systems, and sealed a special container in the hold. We were specifically instructed not to open that container or ask questions about its contents. Did you meet anyone from Quantum Horizons? Get any names? Just one representative, a woman named Dr. Elizabeth Monroe. She supervised the installation personally, made sure everything was positioned exactly right, paid in full, cash, and asked us to keep the work off official records as much as possible. I ran a search for Quantum Horizons Technologies and Dr. Elizabeth Monroe. The company existed barely. A shell corporation registered in Delaware 2 years ago, with a single office address in Seattle that turned out to be a mail forwarding service. Dr. Elizabeth Monroe was harder to find. The name was common enough that I got thousands of hits. but none matching someone involved in quantum technology or maritime operations. This is a ghost operation, I told my team. Someone created a fake company, installed experimental equipment on the Neptune's Fortune, and now that ship's crew has vanished, while a fake crew appeared in their place. This was planned months in advance. But why? Asked Agent David Park from the FBI, who'd been assigned to the case. What's the purpose of replacing a cargo ship's crew? Maybe the crew isn't the point. Maybe the ship is. If you can make an entire crew think they've been working on a vessel for years, you can use that vessel to transport anything you want. No questions, no suspicions, complete cover. You're talking about the perfect smuggling operation. A ship full of people who genuinely believe they're legitimate crew, so they'll pass any inspection or questioning. And if this technology works on one ship, it can work on others. Someone could replace crews on dozens of vessels, create a whole shadow fleet that operates with complete legitimacy. The implications were staggering. International shipping was the backbone of global commerce. If someone could hijack ships without anyone realizing, they could move weapons, drugs, people, or anything else across borders with impunity. Dr. Alan Park, the physicist studying the quantum device, called with an update. Detective Webb, I've made progress on understanding this equipment. It's definitely designed to affect consciousness, but in a very specific way. It doesn't just alter memories, it seems to swap quantum states between biological systems. In English, please. Imagine consciousness as a quantum phenomenon, a specific pattern of quantum states in the brain. This device appears designed to record those patterns from one set of individuals and transplant them into another set. It's like copying someone's consciousness and overwriting someone else's mind with it. So the fake crew on the Neptune's Fortune, they're real people whose consciousnesses were overwritten, with fabricated identities. Possibly. Or they could be the original crew, but with their consciousness patterns edited and altered, without examining them directly at a quantum level. I can't be certain. But either way, someone has developed technology that can literally rewrite human identity. And the real crew, the ones who were on the ship when it left Vancouver, if this device works the way I think it does, their consciousness patterns might have been extracted and stored, whether they still exist in any meaningful sense. He trailed off, reluctant to voice the terrible possibility. I thought about Maria Rodriguez, waiting at home for a husband who might not even exist anymore in any real way. About 18 other families in the same situation. Can the process be reversed? Can we restore the original crew's consciousness patterns? I don't know. This technology is so far beyond my expertise that I'm barely managing educated guesses. We'd need the people who built this device, who understand how it works. We'd need Dr. Elizabeth Monroe, or whoever actually created Quantum Horizons technologies. I decided to try a different approach. If the fake crew had overwritten consciousness patterns, maybe buried somewhere in their minds were traces of who they'd been before. I brought in Dr. Patricia Reeves to attempt hypnotic regression therapy with Captain Rodriguez. I don't understand how this will help, he said as Dr. Reeves prepared the session. You keep saying I'm not who I think I am, but I have complete memories of my life. I know who I am. Humorous, I said. If we're wrong, the worst that happens is you spend an hour being hypnotized. If we're right, we might be able to help you recover your true identity. Under hypnosis, Dr. Reeves took Captain Rodriguez back through his memories, looking for inconsistencies or breaks. At first, everything seemed smooth, detailed recollections of his supposed life, his career, his time on the Neptune's Fortune. But then she pushed deeper, asking him to remember specific dates and locations, and cracks began to appear. Tell me about your first day aboard the Neptune's Fortune, Dr. Reeves said in her calm, soothing voice. I remember. His face contorted with confusion. I remember it clearly, but I also remember it didn't happen. Both memories exist at once. I remember boarding this ship for the first time years ago, but I also remember darkness, cold, being somewhere else, somewhere wrong. Where else were you? I don't know. It's like trying to remember a dream. I was me, but I wasn't me. I was Captain Rodriguez, but I was also someone else. Two people existing in the same space. And then one of them was erased, overwritten, replaced. Who were you before you were Captain Rodriguez? His breathing became rapid, panicked. I was nobody. A blank template. A consciousness without identity, waiting to be filled with someone else's pattern. I wasn't born. I was made. Grown in a vat, given basic functions, basic awareness, and then programmed with Rodriguez's memories and personality. I'm not him. I'm a copy, an imitation, a puppet wearing his identity like a mask. Dr. Reeves brought him out of hypnosis carefully. Captain Rodriguez, or whatever his real name was, looked shaken and nauseated. I remember it now. While I'm awake, he said quietly. I remember being created, being programmed, being activated on that ship, and thinking I'd always been there. Oh God, what am I? Am I even real? You're real, I said firmly. Your consciousness is real, even if your identity was artificially constructed. But we need to know, do you remember what happened to the real Captain Rodriguez? He's in storage. All 19 of them. Their consciousness patterns were extracted and stored digitally, preserved in quantum states within that device in the cargo hold. They're still alive, in a sense, but not in bodies. Just patterns of information, waiting to be reinstalled. Can we restore them? I don't know. I don't have that knowledge. Only the people who created us would know how to reverse the process. But they gave us one instruction, buried deep in our programming. Complete the voyage, deliver the cargo, then return to Vancouver for maintenance. That's when they would extract us, return us to storage, and restore the original crew so no one would ever know what happened. What cargo are you really carrying? What's so important that someone went to these lengths? He closed his eyes, accessing memories that had been hidden from his conscious mind. In containers 7 and 12, not listed on the manifest. Advanced weapons technology, stolen from military research facilities. Someone is using programmed crews to smuggle cutting-edge military hardware out of the country. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Not just an experiment in consciousness manipulation, but an ongoing operation to steal and transport classified military technology. I immediately contacted federal authorities. This was now a matter of national security. Within hours, ISIS, FBI, and military intelligence descended on the Neptune's fortune. The containers Captain Rodriguez identified were opened, revealing exactly what he described: components for advanced weapons systems, quantum computing hardware, classified research materials. We need to trace where this cargo was headed, said Commander Jessica Taylor from ISIS. And we need to find Quantum Horizons Technologies before they realize their operation has been compromised. But we were already too late. When federal agents raided the mail forwarding address associated with Quantum Horizons, they found the office cleaned out, all records destroyed. Dr. Elizabeth Monroe had vanished, along with any traces of who she really was or who she worked for. They knew we were coming, Agent Park said grimly. Probably had monitoring systems in place, alerts set up. The moment we started investigating, they would have been notified, which means they'll disappear, possibly activate other ships with programmed crews, and continue their operations somewhere else. I looked at the fake Captain Rodriguez, sitting in an interrogation room with his head in his hands, trying to reconcile his constructed memories with the reality of his artificial existence. We need to save the real crew. Those 19 people, their consciousness patterns are stored in that device. There has to be a way to restore them. We have the world's best quantum physicists working on it, Commander Taylor assured me. But Detective, you need to understand this technology is decades ahead of anything we thought possible. We're essentially trying to reverse engineer alien technology. It could take months or years to figure out how to safely restore those consciousness patterns. And in the meantime, 19 families wait to learn if their loved ones can ever truly come home. Part 3. The Quantum Prison. Doctor, Alan Park spent 3 weeks analyzing the quantum device found in cargo hold 3. What he discovered was both fascinating and horrifying. The device didn't just store consciousness patterns, it maintained them in an active state, essentially running 19 simulated realities, where the extracted crew members continued to exist, unaware they were no longer in physical bodies. They're alive, in a sense, Dr. Park explained to me and the gathered federal agents. Their consciousnesses are running in quantum substrates, experiencing time, having thoughts and awareness, but they're trapped in simulated environments, probably designed to keep them calm and unaware of their situation. Can we communicate with them? I asked. Theoretically, yes. We've developed an interface that should allow us to project a presence into their simulation. But there are risks. If we disrupt the quantum states that maintain their consciousness, we could accidentally destroy them permanently. We have to try. Those people deserve to know what happened to them. And we need their help to understand the full extent of this operation. 3 days later, we were ready for the first attempt at contact. I volunteered to be the one to enter the simulation. Using a modified version of the consciousness interface technology, my body would remain in our reality, while my awareness projected into the quantum space, where the real Captain Rodriguez existed. Dr. Park connected neural interface equipment to my head. Remember, detective, what you're about to experience isn't exactly real, but it's not entirely fake either. You'll be interacting with genuine consciousness patterns in a constructed environment. Try not to disrupt the simulation too dramatically. We don't want to destabilize their quantum states. Understood. Let's do this. The world dissolved. I felt a sensation of falling, of being stretched and compressed simultaneously. And then reality reformed around me. I was on a ship. Not the Neptune's Fortune, as it existed in dock, but an idealized version of it. The sun was shining, the ocean was calm, everything felt peaceful and perfect. Too perfect. Captain James Rodriguez stood on the bridge, hands on the wheel, smiling contentedly. He turned as I approached, friendly curiosity on his face. Can I help you? I don't recognize you as part of my crew. Captain Rodriguez, my name is Detective Marcus Webb. I need to talk to you about what's really happening. His smile faltered. What do you mean? We're on a routine voyage. Everything is fine. No, Captain, you're not on a voyage. You're in a simulation, a quantum construct. Your consciousness was extracted from your body 3 weeks ago, and has been stored in a device, while someone else took over your ship and your identity. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's insane. This is my ship. I'm sailing it right now. I can feel the wheel in my hands, the deck under my feet. This is real. It feels real because the simulation is extremely sophisticated. But think, Captain, do you remember anything unusual before this voyage? Any gaps in your memory? His certainty wavered. There was something. A moment when everything felt strange, when I couldn't quite remember how I'd gotten here. But then it passed, and everything was normal again. That was when your consciousness was extracted. Everything since then has been this simulation, designed to keep you calm and unaware. But Captain, we found you. We're working on bringing you and your crew back to your real bodies. The crew? His face showed panic. Are they trapped too? All 18 of them are in separate simulations within the same device. They're safe, for now. But we need your help to understand what happened before the extraction. He thought carefully, and as he focused on real memories rather than simulated ones, his face showed concentration and fear. There was a container in cargo hold 3. The client who hired us to transport it was very specific about not opening it, not inspecting it, not asking questions. They paid triple our normal rate. I should have known something was wrong. What else do you remember? Loading the container in Vancouver. It was heavy, required special handling, and there was a woman supervising the loading, making sure it was positioned exactly right in the hold. She said her name was Dr. Monroe, that she worked for the company that owned the cargo. Dr. Elizabeth Monroe from Quantum Horizons Technologies. Yes, that was the company name. She seemed friendly, professional, but there was something about her eyes, they were calculating, analytical, like she was studying us, rather than just supervising cargo loading. Do you remember what happened after you left Vancouver? We set sail. Everything was routine. But around midnight on our first night out, I started feeling strange, dizzy, disoriented. I thought it was something I ate. And then I was here, in this simulation, though I didn't know it was a simulation until you told me. The device in that container was activated. It extracted your consciousness and the consciousness of your entire crew, stored you in quantum substrate, and overwrote your bodies with fabricated identities. Why? What was the purpose? To create a crew that would transport stolen military technology, without realizing what they were carrying. Programmed identities that would pass any inspection or questioning because they genuinely believed they were legitimate crew. Rodriguez's face hardened with anger. So we were used, our bodies stolen, our identities copied. Also criminals could smuggle weapons. Yes. But we're going to fix this. We're going to get you and your crew back into your real bodies. What happened to the fake versions? The ones wearing our identities? They're in protective custody. Once we understood what they were, artificially created consciousness patterns, programmed with constructed identities, we couldn't exactly charge them with crimes. They're as much victims as you are, created for a specific purpose without choice in the matter. They're victims, Rodriguez agreed, but they're also evidence of what someone can do with this technology. If they can create fake people, give them complete identities and memories, make them indistinguishable from real humans. Detective, this technology is terrifying. In the wrong hands, it could be used to replace anyone, anywhere, for any purpose. He was right. The implications of consciousness manipulation technology were staggering. Political leaders could be replaced with programmed duplicates. Witnesses could have their memories edited. Anyone could be made to believe they were someone else entirely. We're working on ways to detect these manipulated consciousnesses, I assured him. Quantum signatures that would identify artificially created or modified identities. But it's going to take time. Time that other ships' crews might not have. Detective, if this was done to us, it's probably being done to others right now. You need to find Dr. Monroe and whoever she's working for before they replace more crews. I spent the next hour interviewing other crew members in their individual simulations. Their stories were all consistent: normal voyage, sudden disorientation, waking up in idealized versions of their work without realizing anything was wrong. When I returned to physical reality, disconnecting from the quantum interface, I was exhausted but determined. We need to find every ship that had work done by Dr. Monroe or Quantum Horizons Technologies. If they installed this device on the Neptune's Fortune, they probably installed them on other vessels too. Commander Taylor had her team run a comprehensive search of maritime records. What they found was disturbing. Over the past 2 years, 16 different cargo ships had undergone specialized equipment installation by Quantum Horizons Technologies or associated shell companies. 16 ships, I said, feeling sick. That's potentially over 300 crew members who've been extracted and replaced. And we have no way of knowing which crews are real and which are programmed duplicates. Agent Park added. They're all functioning normally, passing all inspections, showing no signs of manipulation. We need to check them all. Board every ship, scan for quantum devices, verify every crew member's identity. It was a massive operation, requiring coordination between multiple international maritime authorities. But over the next month, teams boarded and inspected all 16 vessels that had been serviced by Quantum Horizons. 13 of the ships were clean. Whatever equipment had been installed had been removed, or had never been quantum consciousness devices in the first place. But 3 ships showed evidence of recent consciousness extraction and replacement. The MV Pacific Star, currently docked in Los Angeles, had a crew of 22 programmed individuals, their real counterparts trapped in quantum simulations. The Atlantic Horizon, mid-voyage between Japan and California, had a crew of 19 fabricated consciousnesses. And most disturbing, the MV Arctic Explorer, a research vessel operating near Alaska, had a crew of 31 replaced individuals, and this crew included scientists working on classified climate research for the Department of Defense. They're not just smuggling weapons, Commander Taylor realized. They're stealing research, classified information, anything that passes through these vessels. And they're using the programmed crews to make it all look legitimate. Where is Dr. Monroe now? I demanded. She can't have just vanished. She needs access to the ships to monitor the devices, to extract and replace crews when necessary. She has to be somewhere in the region. We're tracking financial records, communications, any trace of quantum horizons or associated entities, Agent Park said. But whoever set this up was extremely careful. Every transaction is laundered through multiple companies. Every communication is encrypted and routed through proxy servers. Then we use the devices themselves. They have to communicate with a central system, somewhere that stores the master copies of all these extracted consciousnesses. Find that system, and we find Dr. Monroe. Dr. Alan Park studied the quantum device for 3 more days, mapping its communication protocols. "I've found it," he announced. "The device transmits data to a central server, probably where backup copies of all consciousness patterns are stored. The transmission is heavily encrypted, and